everyone's over here crying about the closure of Firehawk. Well, some people are. Firehawk came in the middle of my upbringing. I'm just not as connected with it as I am with some of the other attractions at the park. Then again, quite a few of the attractions that were introduced during the early end of my upbringing are dead now. Maybe this is saying something about my era. Nobody better touch my Adventure Express.
But it's weird, Firehawk has been around for 12 years and I just don't feel as connected. Although I'm sure there's quite a few people who grow up with Firehawk being one of the go-to attractions, but I'm not sure if there's a big population who just the thought of it gives them the warm fuzzies on the inside. For me, the thought of it makes me think of Heat Stroke, watching two trains looking like ketchup and mustard take 10 minutes between each dispatch. But hey, to each their own.
When I heard the speculations about some of the other coasters at Kings Island, something in my soul just wanted to protest if they decided to remove them. My soul was already singing, "We shall overcome," with the deep voice, because there's always that one bass singer in the Negro spiritual or the movement song. We shall overcome someday. I'm gonna let nobody turn me around. I know the one thing we did right, hey, was the day we started the fight. This resistance is the resistance caused by nostalgia.
According to Hollock and Halvena, nostalgia is the yearning for the past. This yearning feeling can be so significant that it affects an individual's preferences for possessions that generate nostalgic responses. This theory, for many park visitors, attending a park is more than just a current physiological thrill, but it is also a visit to the past, a past that makes people feel at home. Social identity theory suggests nostalgia helps individuals define themselves in relation to those of different lifestyles and time periods. I'll get into more of this in another video, but similarly, nostalgia can play a role in resistance to change, as nostalgia may produce healthy or unhealthy social and cultural bondage, attachment to home, and the continuity of self. Looking at Kings Island shows why other coasters speculated to be on the chopping block had too strong of a sociocultural bond, as Kings Island being my home park. And this is true for many others whose home park is Kings Island. Vortex opened in 1987 as the first roller coaster to go upside down 6 times, solidifying Kings Island's stakes as one of the strongest amusement parks.
It remains today as one of the most iconic, picturesque coasters ever, despite how bad that gives you migraines.
Vortex uses the station of the original Bat, a first of its kind suspended roller coaster. The current Bat, originally Top Gun, was repainted and themed to commemorate the original. That's really the only reason the Bat couldn't go, to be honest.
Even in Vertigo, like, I haven't felt the same way about the coaster ever since they changed it to look like Sadness from Inside Out. But still, it's something about its presence right at the front of the entrance. At this point, Kings Island is not Kings Island if I'm not waiting at the front. And in Vertigo's right there, and I'm looking at them screaming and shouting and letting it all out, and then screaming and shouting and letting it out. Like, oh, yo, yo, yo. It just makes me feel like home.
A strong piece of this nostalgic resistance theory speaks on attachment to home. Not only was Firehawk a lot younger than its peers, but it wasn't even born here.
The bitch was adopted. Nobody wanted that hoe. We was just like, I guess. I'm just kidding. Kings Island has one of the best lineups for coasters in the Cedar Fair chain. So we were probably like the first one to decide which coasters that we wanted from Geauga Lake when it closed.
Geauga Lake was owned by Cedar Fair when it closed its doors to the public. I mean, its flagship park is literally half an hour away, so Cedar Fair was like, yeah, let's get rid of the scraps. They basically had an auction for the coasters. Cedar Point looked at Geauga Lake's coasters and laughed. You think I would want one of those? Ew. Kings Island, having one of the best lineup of coasters in the Cedar Fair chain, selected the most innovative, X-Flight, a Vekoma Flying Dutchman model flying roller coaster. debuting in 2001, that flipped riders upside down and had many twists and turns. King's Dominion quickly grabbed Dominator. Valley Fair, for being an OG Cedar Fair park, called dibs on Still Venom, the suspended Impulse coaster, and Michigan Adventure.
This all goes to say that the nostalgia kind of dissipated at Geauga Lake.
Being someone who visited Six Flags Worlds of Adventure, or Geauga Lake, often when I was younger, X-Flight was dope. It really stood out. The placement in the park was genius, right by the parking lot. It felt like it was made for the park. When it was moved to Kings Island, the lure the coaster gave felt washed. Promotional material was not nearly at the level of Diamondback, Banshee, and Mystic Timbers. For such a big coaster, it almost felt like a throwaway. I mean, the opening day line was still a bitch, but seriously, even Italian Job, which is now Backlot Stunt Coaster, felt like a bigger project the year it debuted than Firehawk. And that ride's literally the size of my apartment building. And Firehawk was awkwardly tucked into the corner and painted blood red to represent the wound of Paramount Parks.
There's another coaster that's a peculiar case of this nostalgia resistance. And this was a ground up coaster. I never feel like it got the reputation that it deserves, I don't know. Definitely not as recognized as you think that it would be. Can you guess this ride if you didn't read the title already? Of course not, because this ride has like no representation. That coaster is Patriot at Worlds of Fun.
Patriot's not the only ground up attraction that promotion, credibility, and awe was marginalized by replacing or substituting a more iconic attraction. Banshee, for example, is still in some people's conversations on being a worthy replacement to such an infamous coaster as Son of Beast. And this conversation is not really if Banshee's better or not. It's just more so about that it's not as iconic or groundbreaking or even connected to the overall themes of the park, such as Son of Beast connected to the legendary Beast. Looking into the future, the replacement of Universal Orlando's Islands of Adventure, Dueling Dragons, Dueling Inverted Roller Coaster, is being replaced with a Harry Potter family coaster, as many theme park enthusiasts weary.
But Patriot never replaced any coaster per se. It was more like a delayed substitute, similar to Banshee. But unlike Banshee, it doesn't sit in the exact same spot as the original coaster did. It's just in a close proximity.
Worlds of Fun is an amusement park that opened in 1973 and is in Kansas City, Missouri. It is currently owned by Cedar Fair and houses such attractions as Mamba, a Morgan Hyper, 2 wooden coasters, Timberwolf and Prowler, some decent flats such as the indoor Trabant named Cyclone Sam, and a Shrung Kids area.
I thought I'd seen it all, but this was the big one. It didn't seem like any part of Kansas City I knew. It seemed strange. Thousands had been lured here before me in breathless wonder. You can't explain that feeling that draws you to the unknown. Unknown, but getting closer with each nervous step. 135 seconds that seem to last forever. One lift, and it begins, with a 115-foot plunge. Over 3,400 feet of track, twisted into 2 55-foot high loops. And then, more. The boomerang, devilish, breathtaking. With 3 28-passenger trains, it carries over 2,000 people an hour through the thrilling, twisting labyrinth of the Orient Express.
In 1980, Orient Express debuted at Worlds of Fun. Prior to this, Worlds of Fun's only coasters were Zempezi Zinger, a Schwarzkopf Speed Racer Jumbo Jet that most exciting moment was going up a spiral stair. Unless I'm Will Ferrell in tights, I'm gonna need to have a little more than that.
See, I was talking about Elf, but I didn't realize how often Will Ferrell wears tights. And I'm just kidding, I know Kansas City natives adored that ride, but that's not what this video's about.
Shush Boomer, a Schwarzkopf Wildcat.
There was also Silly Serpent, which was a kiddie coaster, which length was just about as long as my dick. You can ask anyone I've been with and they can tell you the length after they put down their magnifying glass. Oh yeah, there's not really many people that you can ask because I'd be more single than a #1 at Wendy's without the cheese because I stay broke.
And Scream Roller, which is me after I let go of the bowling ball hoping my shouts will keep it away from the gutter. It doesn't, or my head. For some years it was also named Extreme Roller, or what my mom used to put in her hair to curl it. Extreme Roller is an aerodynamic looping roller coaster, and they made it stand up for 1 year.
Where do I sit? You don't.
Imagine corkscrew standing up. My knees will be more buckled than the hats of mythical pilgrims.
So when Kansas City introduced Orient Express, all the other parks in America was like, excuse me, who is this dude? Just putting Kansas City back on the map, you know. That's why they call us the Chiefs.
Orient Express was an aerodynamics looping roller coaster. It was 3,740 feet long, 117 feet high, 50 miles per hour, and it had 4 inversions, including 2 interlocking loops and the world's first kamikaze curve.
A Batwing.
It was themed in the Orient section, which was only low-key racist. And the paint scheme was more red than answer sheets. The only time students actually read. Make T3 look like a skim.
This coaster was an icon for the park for 23 years. Well, up until about 1999. That's when shit began to hit the fan. That is a disturbing saying.
Let's just say a train derailed 35 feet above the ground and after a metal fracture of the track. No one was injured, just traumatized for the rest of their lives. Reports say that they sat in silence, afraid to move as if they were in the world of A Quiet Place.
And like some other looping arrows, the early 2000s showed how much parks were willing to keep up with the maintenance of these coasters. Kings Island was like, I think I'm gonna keep mine. I think I'm gonna stick it through. That's when Worlds of Fun and Six Flags Great Adventure bursted out laughing. Girl, if you don't get that abortion. That went dark. Six Flags Great Adventure was ear hustling in this convo. Meanwhile, King's Dominion was closing their ears and going la 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 la. So Worlds of Fun decided to close the ride permanently.
No attraction has ever replaced the land the coaster stood on. However, a Halloween haunt house does use its station. The year after its closing, Worlds of Fun installed spinning dragons nearby, a Gertzlauer spinning coaster. And though it's a fun ride, the general public and park goers alike thought, yeah, that ain't it.
Those Kansas Cityans wanted a coaster that could supplement those 4 inversions. Something more reliable and perhaps even better.
In 2006, Patriot opens as the longest, tallest, and fastest full-circuit inverted roller coaster in the region. It was the park's largest capital investment on a single attraction at $14 million. With Patriot, you strap in and pull down your over-the-shoulder restraint, signifying that you won't feel like you're stuck in a Spider-Man's web like some invert we know. As you're leaving the station, it goes left, but gracefully like my GRE scores went. You rise the 149-foot lift, and after the pre-drop slaps the back of your head like your mom does after you talked back, you have a sweeping dive into a vertical loop. Whee! Then you do this slight S-curve beneath the lift hill. I don't think the designers knew what they wanted to do at this point. I call it the guessing straightaway. You rise into a 0G roll. Can I get a buttery smooth roll, no G please? Just keep calm and your shoulder harness will not slap you in the face. I panicked. Next is an Immelman followed by a right rising helix. Then you go into the most unique moment of the ride. A non-steep hill.
B&M inverts don't really have these. I mean, Dueling Dragons did, but you see what happened to that.
That's really just to brace you from a corkscrew that semi-snatches you. Almost a full snatch, but they had mercy. You have this tight butt imprinting helix, and then you go into the brakes. Patriot is kick-ass. Even with this and other reasons such as lack of design originality, and you're at a park that gets slept on in general, and you have predictable forcefulness.
I have a whole theory on the forcefulness of B&Ms. This was built in the mid-2000s. It wasn't that 90s like ridiculously forceful coasters, and it wasn't that 2010s, you know, very graceful, at times forceless experiences. It was just in the middle, not really knowing what it wants to be.
Patriot has never gotten the reputation that many good ground-up coasters receive due to nostalgia resistance.
So we'll need to wait some time for this ground-up coaster to gain some of that nostalgia as children growing up around the Kansas City area continue to be born, I guess, and go to Worlds of Fun. Yeah, that's how it goes. When there's thoughts of removal, which hopefully won't happen until for decades, right? That's when park goers and everybody in the coaster community will really feel kind of nostalgic with the coaster and not want it to leave. Really, the most meaningful part of this coaster is the paint scheme, to be honest. So if they decide to paint, they said they're gonna do a repaint job of that and just like color the whole track red or something, that I am protesting. So what do you think about nostalgia and resistance in roller coasters and attractions? What coasters do you feel so strongly that you just refuse to let them touch a thing? It has to be the most minimal of refurbishments. What are your thoughts on Orient Express and Patriot at Worlds of Fun? This kind of reminds me of how I felt about the Dark Shooter ride, Scooby-Doo Haunted Castle, is that what it was called? And Boo Blasters, after they took away my Phantom Theater. But we can talk about that next time. I'm Rob from Rob's Rides, keeping it 100 with all things amusement. And if you thought I was Tyler Banks, hit subscribe and I'll come back with a new video.